Okay, so our first topic for this
Sir, yung
semester.
iba hindi makapasok.
Why?
Sa connection po ata nila, sir.
Okay, maybe they're fluctuate yung connection. Are they using data connection? Okay lang naman, I'll be admitting naman kung sino man yung papasok. So, we can just start, no? Anyway, they can watch our discussion naman later on. So we have functions. In mathematics, a function is a binary relation over two sets that associates to every elements of the first set exactly one element of the second set. Typical examples are functions from integers to integers, or from the real numbers to real numbers. Functions were originally the idealization of how a varying quantity depends on another quantity. For example, the position of a planet is a function of time. And historically, the concept was elaborated with the infinitesimal calculus at the end of the 17th century. And until the 19th century, the functions that were considered were differentiable. That is, they had a high degree of regularity. The concept of functions was formalized at the end of the 19th century in terms of the set theory, and this writ enlarged the domains of application of the concept. Functions are widely used in science and in most fields of mathematics. It has been said that functions are the central objects of investigation in most fields of mathematics. Paki-turn off yung mic. Kel, paki-turn off yung mic. Okay, so after we finish this module, you should be able to determine algebraically whether a given equation is a function or not, determine the domain and the range of a function, and evaluate functions at a certain value. So these are the goals that we have to accomplish. So that is just the introduction of the basic technical definition of function and short history of the concept of functions. So we go now to our formal discussion. Now to define function in a simpler way, we have this definition. Function can be generalized as a relation between quantities where the value of one quantity depends on the value of another quantity. So dependent. One of our value is dependent to the value of the other one. As in, the employee's salary may depend on the number of hours worked. Of course, the more hours worked, the higher the salary. The gross profit in producing and selling goods may depend on number of items produced and sold. Of course, the more items produced and sold, the higher the profit company will get. And another example, the area of circle depends on the radius of the circle. Of course, the more, or ano ba tawag doon? The greater the length of the radius, the greater the area of the circle. So those are examples of functions, or those are examples of quantities that are related from each other. So in mathematics, we define function. A function can be thought of as a correspondence from a set x of a real number x to set y of a real number y, where y is unique for a specific value of x. Don't be confused dun sa symbols, no? We are to use capital letters for as name of sets, and small letters naman as elements of the set. Okay, like for example, we have capital X as set, small x as element of the set X. Okay, but before that, let us recall the concept of relation. For all we know, a function is a special type of relation. Okay, recall natin. Now there were, you know what is a relation? It is, from the term itself, it is the relationship or correspondence of two objects or two quantities. Now there were three types of relations. What are these? Magtatawag ako. If there's no volunteer, I'll be calling names. Recall nyo muna. What are the three types of relations? You may just,
Yung one-to-one.
ayan, Brigida.
One-to-one relation, many-to-one, tsaka po one-to-many.
Exactly. Those are the types of relation. We have one-to-one relation, where there is one-to-one correspondence between the elements of the first and the second set. And then we have one-to-many relation, where a single element in the first set is being paired with two or more elements in the second set. And lastly, many-to-one. Many-to-one naman, we have two or more elements in the first set being paired to a single element in the second set. Now, two of these examples, or two of these type of relations, can be considered as function. And one of them is not a function. So what are this? What type of relations can be considered as function?
One-to-one, sir.
Jason. So one-to-one is a function. What else?
One-to-many po. Many-to.
Talaga. So, Kevin, sagot ni Bridget at saka ni Jason.
Ay, wait, sir.
One-to-one.
Tsaka many-to-one po. Tama po.
Many-to-one.
Apo.
Okay. So, yun nga. Our definition is that for us to consider relation to function is when there is no x value, or there's no repeating x value or x coordinate, or there's no repeating elements in the first set. Okay, whereas in one-to-many kasi, for example, A is being paired to B and C. So as ordered pairs, that is A, B, and A, C. So in the set of ordered pairs, twice nag-appear yung element na A. So that cannot be considered as function. So okay na yun. Now functions are being written in different ways. For instance, the function in which every element in set Y is 3 more than the corresponding element in set X can be written using any of this form. So number one form, the first form, this is being read as under function f, x maps to x plus 3. Or under f, x is assigned to x plus 3, or the image of x under f is x plus 3. So any of this, or any way you read this function or this form, okay lang. And for number 2, same lang. So this being read as the same as number 1. X maps to x plus 3. X is assigned to x plus 3, or the image of x is x plus 3. And for number 3, at this time, the the function is written in rule form. Diba natin? Rule form siya. If you remember the two ways of expressing sets, the rule form and the tabular form during the set notation. So F is equivalent to the set of all ordered pairs x and y such that y is equivalent to x plus 3. So I repeat. The function f is the set of ordered pairs x and y such that, so instead of the line yung ginamit natin during the rule form, we can also use colon, you know, which read as such that y equals x plus 3. Or another 4 and 5, yung normal na ginagamit natin, you can just omit this portion. You can just state that the function is equivalent to y is equal to x plus 3. Or in other form, instead of writing y, we may use function of x or f of x. So f of x and y are just the same. F of x being the dependent variable. Dependent siya sa value ng x. Same goes with y. Y is dependent to the value of x. So x being the independent variable. Okay. So, yan. Now, example 1.1, the equation f of x or y is equivalent to x plus 3 defines a function from the set of real numbers. The set of real numbers, the following table gives the value of y assigned to some particular value of x. For example, ito. If you remember, we have different ways to express functions and relations. One of this is the tabular form in table form. Ito yung example natin. And we have 4 more. We call natin what are these ways to express functions and relations. So one is, again, the tabular form. We still have 4. What are these? Any volunteer? Hello?
Ano sir, paulit po.
The different ways of expressing functions and relations. One is the tabular form or the table form. Or table of values pala, sorry. Table of values.
Mapping sir.
There's one, mapping.
Graph.
So we have the graphing. We have
Equation.
equation, yes. And then lastly, ito. Ano to? The ordered pairs. So those are the different ways of expressing
Ano po, sir?
relation. Ordered pairs, set of ordered pairs. So let's repeat, no? So, there are 5 ways of expressing functions in relation. We have set of ordered pairs, we have table of values, we have mappings, we have graph, and then we have lastly the equation. No? Now we can, this example, yung x plus 3 natin, can be defined as a function. Now, since it satisfies the definition of a function, na there is no x value that is repeated in the given table of values. In this case, table of values in the manner. So the following table gives the value of y assigned to some particular values of x. And to be particular, this function is a one-to-one relation. Moving on, we have this another definition of a function. Let x and y be non-empty sets. A function f from x and y is the rule that assigns to each x element of x a unique y elements of y. The set of all values of x is called the domain of the function. The set of all values of y is called the range of the function, or they can be written as dom f and ran f respectively. Later on, we'll be looking for the domain and the range of functions. But before that, let's recall the functions as expressed using equations. So functions and relations can be expressed by means of an equation. Here are guidelines for us to easily identify if an equation is not a function. We cannot consider an equation a function if any of this condition is satisfied. So first condition, there is no y in the equation. If there is no y, not a function. If there is a y, it could be a function. Second condition, if the exponent of y is an even number, not a function. But if the exponent is not an even, function siya. Y is in absolute value symbol. If y is an absolute value symbol, not a function. But if it's not, it could be a function. The relationship is not in equality form. In equality form siya. So this is not a function, but if our relationship is equal, then the equation is a function. Now let's have an example. So example 1.2, let's identify whether this function describes, this equation describes or defines a function. So we have the equation x plus y is equal to 1. This defines a function. Now for us to verify this, we have to isolate the dependent variable y. Isolating the y, this gives us y is equal to negative x plus 1. Now, if we are to assume values of x, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then solving for the corresponding values of y, we could observe that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the values of x and the values of y. So hence we see that any given value of x, there exactly one value of y. And furthermore, we can consider this as a function since there is none of this condition is satisfied. Condition satisfied. Therefore, this is a function. Okay, now clear? Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Example 1.3. Equation absolute value of y is equivalent to negative x plus 1 does not define a function. So recall natin yung absolute value concept. When do we have a absolute value? So the absolute value is actually the distance of a specific numerical value dun sa number line natin. So when we talk about distance, we have to disregard the sign. So the absolute value of y can be positive y or negative y. Positive y siya if y is greater than or equal to 0. And it is negative y if y is less than 0 or negative yung y natin. So if we get the absolute value of y and negative y, same y lang yung makuha natin. Okay? same y lang, or we have to disregard the sign. We will be having. Therefore, absolute value of y could give us two different solutions, which is the positive form and its negative form. So observe that y is inside the absolute value symbol. Thus, and that is, let's first ordered pair is negative 1, 2, and second ordered pair is negative 2. Solve natin, no? Yan, copy ko lang. Show you why we cannot consider this a function. Yan. We'll be using x if x is equivalent to negative. If x is equal to negative 1. So let's replace x by negative 1. So this will give us negative times negative. Na? Basic rule of mathematics, we have
Positive.
positive 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, but we have to consider the absolute value. If y is 2, then the absolute value may be the positive form and the negative form. So meron tayo actually dalawang ordered pairs. First ordered pair is when we consider the positive one. So if x is negative 1, our y could be positive 2. Or the other one. If x is negative 1, possible din na si y is negative 2. Okay? So twice nag-appear yung element nating negative 1 dun sa set of ordered pairs natin. So we cannot consider that as a function. And but upon observing, of course, one of the condition na nga. So there are two distinct ordered pairs, and one of the condition natin is satisfied. Ito. So dun pa lang, alam na natin na hindi na siya function. Y is inside the absolute value symbol. So, ayan. Question?
Answer.
Paano? Example 1.4. We have x squared plus y is equal to 3. And set a function. Did we satisfy any of the condition? You know, although we have here x squared, but our reference is y.
Y.
So note that any value for x will give exactly one value for y, and that none of the guidelines was satisfied. Therefore, the given equation defines y as a function of x. And example 1.5, we have x squared plus y squared is equal to 4. Set a function.
Not.
Okay, upon observing the conditions, one of the conditions satisfied.
Y squared.
And furthermore, to illustrate how we cannot consider this as a function. Okay natin. So upon isolating y variable on one side of the equation, we have this. Now, nanggaling to, if we transpose x squared to the other side, we have 4 minus x squared. And to get rid of the square, we have to extract the root of the term. Kaya meron tayong square root dito. And the square root is the positive, negative. Okay. Meron tayo ulit dalawang possibility. The positive root and the negative root. So if we For instance, if x is equivalent to 0, if x is equivalent to 0, using this equation, 0 squared is of course, wala siya, no? So we have this. What is square root of 4?
Positive, negative 2.
Positive. 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 squared is 4 then. So we have two possible y's if x is 0. So twice uling nag-appear si 0 dun sa ordered pairs natin. 0, 2, and 0, negative 2. So this cannot be a function. And lastly, 1.6, the expression y is greater than or equal to 3x plus 2 does not define a function. So one of the condition is that the relationship must be in equality form.
Equality.
Okay. Whereas, although may equal tayo dito, but we can also observe the inequality in greater than. Okay, let me show you bakit siya hindi naging function. So again, let's try to assume a value of x. In this case, we assume that if x is equivalent to 1. If x is equivalent to 1, and yung equation. So we'll be using, x is now 1, and 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay? So our y daw could be equal to 5. So pwede siya. Y is equal to 5. So our first ordered pair is 1, 5.
Greater than.
And it could also be greater than 5. So the integer that is greater than 5, it could be 6. No? So meron pa tayo kasing condition. Aside from being equal, it could also be greater than. So it could be 6, no? So we have another ordered pair, 1 and 6. Pwede siyang 1, 7, 1, 8, 1, 9. Since those numbers are also greater than 5. So hindi lang 2 yung possible solution if x is equal to 1. It could be infinite. No? If you are to consider other numbers greater than. Therefore, this is not a function. Any question?
Wala na po, sir.
Okay. So let's proceed. We have the domain and the range. In determining the domain of a function, it is helpful to be reminded of the following. We are familiar with different types of algebraic equations or algebraic functions. One of this is called the polynomial function. Familiar na tayo sa polynomial function, no? Although its definition is, if we look at the definition, medyo komplikado siyang tignan kasi maraming letters and variables that is being used. But it just suggests that we have a descending power n minus 1 and minus 2, and we have our a are the numerical coefficient of the function, are all member of the real numbers, and that a sub n cannot be equal to 0. Otherwise, mawawala yung first term ng ating function. And n is a non-negative integer. Non-negative means the exponent must not be a negative integer. So otherwise, we'll be applying laws of exponent which is the inverse of a certain number. And the domain of the polynomial function is the real number. So always to, no? Take note of that. The domain of any polynomial function is equivalent to the real number. The domain of f is equivalent to real number. Ibig sabihin, the graph of any polynomial function will pass through every values of x in the x-axis. Yun yung ibig sabihin niya. And second, we have f of x is equivalent to g of x over h of x, where g and h are polynomial function. This is specifically called as the rational function or the fractional function. And its domain is said to be all set of x or element of R such that h of x cannot be equal to 0. So we have this restriction for rational function. Why? Because we are if our denominator, which is h of x, is equivalent to 0, magiging undefined. So the value of our function becomes undefined. So yun yung iniiwasan natin. So our denominator should not be equal to 0. So the domain, as I told you, is a set of all real numbers and we have to omit the value of x where we could where the function can be undefined. So tatanggalin natin sa set of x. And for number 3, we have the radical function. Now we have two cases here. First case is we have let's be familiar first with the parts of radical function. Recall natin. We have n here is called the index of the radical function, and of course the radical sign, and the expression inside the radical sign is called the radicand. Okay. Now the two cases are if the index is even, squared to the 4th, 6th, 8th root, 10th root, 12th root, and so on. The domain of the radical function is said to be all set of x element of R such that g of x or the radicand is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, we also have restriction here. Our restriction is that the radicand must not be lesser than 0 or it cannot be negative. Otherwise, the square root or the even root of a negative number does not belong to the real number system. At i-try nyo sa calculators nyo if you input the square root, the 4th root, the 6th root of a negative number, hindi siya kaya. Hindi kaya ng calculator because it is not or hindi included yung solution dun sa real number system. But if our index is positive odd integer, our domain is the real number then. The set of all x such that x is a real number. Okay, that is for radical. And then yun. There are more forms of functions, but we are just to apply or to discuss the polynomial, the radical, and the rational function. Yun lang muna. Although sa polynomial kasi meron pang other functions. We have linear functions, quadratic functions, and so on. And for the range, ang range, ayan siya. The range of a function can be determined by analyzing the possible values of x. You have to napuputol ba yung connection niya? expressing x in terms of y, then solving for the values of y, where the new equation will be defined, and consider the graph of the function. So one way of knowing the range is that you have to observe the values of y. If the values, if the set of y values are
Bro,
very defined, then you may
balita boy.
just, ayan, mag-usap kayo sa
Busy ka din?
ano ba yan? Narinig ko yung usapan niyo. Okay, number 2.
Sir, ang hirap po pala nito.
Ano yun?
Ganito.
Bakit?
Wala kaming ganong masyadong maintindihan, sir.
Huwag tanong kasi kayo.
Sir,
Sir,
nawawalan po ng
mabilis
kuryente
po
sa
yung
amin, sir.
pagsalita, sir, tapos nagbabuffering.
Shopping po yung order.
Ganun ba? Nasaan na kanina pa? Para naulit ko yung mga sinasabi ko. Balit ako ng salita dito, di naman kayo nag-feedback.
Hanggang yun lang po, sir.
Okay, let's go back to the range. So range can be identified by analyzing the possible values of y. If the values of the all set of y seems to be defined, then you may just write the range. And if not, you have to express x in terms of y, or you have to isolate the x variable. Diba yung kanina naka-isolate yung y variable? Typically, isolated yung y variable or our f of x. Now, but to find the range of the function, we have to isolate x variable this time. Now, and then, if complicated pa rin, you have now to consider the graph of the function, or to verify whether your range is correct, you have to consider the function, or you have to graph the function. Okay, let's have an example. For that, let me open my program. Ayan. Are you seeing this interface or this program? The Microsoft Mathematics.
sir.
One
Yes,
good software.
Yes, sir.
One good software to graph a function is with the use of Microsoft Mathematics. It is a free source, and you may download it in the official website of Microsoft. So, try natin i-apply ito. So, going back to our example, 1.7. Consider the function f of x is equal to x minus 3. Now, since it is a polynomial function, we can just say that its domain is the set of all real numbers. And if we express x in terms of y, same then. For every values of y, there is only one value of x. Therefore, madali natin masabi na ang range natin is also the real number. Now, to graph this, let me show you bakit naging real number yung domain and yung range natin. So, graphing this function, we have y is equivalent to x minus 3. Ayan. Okay, are you seeing the graph?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now,
Medyo late lang po, sir.
yeah, medyo delayed siya kasi ano din yung connection ko. If we trace the graph, ito siya, all the values of x and all the values of y is being, anong tawag doon? Or the graph pass every values of x and every values of y. Kaya, no, not necessarily na dadaan siya dun sa mismong axis, no? Sa mismong axis ni x and y. For example, let me identify one point. Let's say we use this point. Ito. Okay, this one. Let's try to use this point. Nakita niyo yung point? Now, this point passes through this x value. Okay. Dinaanan na itong x value na to. And also, this point passes through this y value. Okay, yun yung ibig sabihin niya. And as I told you, every value or every real number value of x and y dinaanan ng ating function. Yun yung ibig sabihin niya. Are we clear?
Yes,
Clear
sir.
ba si dominance range? Okay. Another example. We have 1.8. G of x is equivalent to x squared plus 5x plus 6. Yung kanina is a linear function, kaya slanting line yung graph natin. But this time we have a parabola. Although polynomial function siya, there is this restriction. Sa domain, walang problema. Since it's a polynomial function, its domain is just the real number. Or the graph passes through every element of x. But ibang salita, ibang case na sa range ni parabola or ni quadratic function. So its graph is a parabola that opens upward with the vertex -5/2 and -1/4. Now there is no time for us to discuss further how its vertex is formed or bakit open upward or downward si parabola. So let me just identify the vertex. And we'll be focusing dito kay y. Now this is x and this is y. This is the coordinate of the vertex. And we have this -4. Now if the parabola opens upward, ibig sabihin, -1/4 is the lowest y of the parabola. Okay. I think you will be understanding more what I'm talking about if I were to graph the function. Graph natin. Yan. So here is the parabola. So it opens upward. If we trace again, we can observe that the graph passes through every element of x. So I'm talking about, again, not necessarily na dadaan siya sa x-axis. No? So this point Ito yung dinaanan niyang x, this point, and so on. And ito yung mga y's natin. This is the y, this is the y, and then this is the y. So yun yung ibig sabihin niya. And then we have here, if you notice, not all y values ay dinaanan ng parabola. In fact, from here, from this point, pataas lang. Okay? So we have this limitation, or we have this restriction. We have to restrict our range. So our domain, no problem, since it is just the real numbers. But for our range, the restriction must be from this point and so on, or upward, or any values of y greater than or equal to this point. And what is this point? It is actually the vertex of the parabola. Kung papansin nyo, ano yung y value ni... I-zoom nyo na lang, no? Medyo maliit. Paki-zoom na lang siya. Merong feature yung zoom na pwedeng i-zoom. Ay, nawala. Baling ko lang yung annotations. Let's clear this. Yeah. Again, this is the vertex. And our vertex kanina is negative 1.25. Hindi ko lang siya ma-perfect, no? But y is negative 1/4, right? In decimal form, that's negative 0.25. So ito siya. Paki-zoom na lang sa mga smartphone and sa inyong computer. So our range must be all set of y such that y is greater than or equal to negative 1/4. So all values of y equal to negative 1/4 and or above or more than negative 1/4. All of this. So yun yung magiging range natin. Any question? And symbol, ito siya. So range of the function is equivalent to all set of y elements of R such that y is greater than or equal to 1/4 or negative 0.25. Nakuha. Oh,
Hindi po masyado.
hindi masyado. How about the others?
Medyo lang po.
Medyo lang. Bakit medyo lang? Yung negative 1/4 dito, binigay ko na siya, no? We don't have time kasi to solve the vertex of the parabola. So, nilagay na siya kagad. More examples tayo para madaling maintindihan. So, 1.9. Find the domain and the range of the function h of x is equivalent to square root of 4 minus x squared. So we have now an example of radical function. And we have to restrict our radicand as much as possible, or hindi as much as possible. We have to restrict our radicand as positive. No? Dapat positive lang siya or is equivalent to 0. Our radicand must not be equivalent to a negative value. So that is our restriction. Now, since h is radical function with even index, take note, we have your square root. So our index is 2, and 2 is an even. So our domain, yun nga, may restriction yung domain natin. Hindi siya yung lahat ng real number. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So, our radicand must be greater than or equal to 0. Ito siya. Now, solving this equation, we have to look for the value of x where the radicand be, or kung saan magiging negative yung radicand natin. What are the values of x where the radicand becomes negative? So, ito yon. Take note, 4 minus x squared can be factored. Pwede nating i-factor si 4 minus x squared. And in fact, 4 is a square, x squared is a perfect square. So the difference between two squares, ang factor niyan ay the sum and difference between two terms. Ito yung factor niyan. These are the factor. Now, nag-shortcut siya dito, but let me show you the solution kung bakit siya naging ganito. So we have two values of x, separating these two values. Our x could be this one. And 2 minus x greater than 0. That is the first factor. Or second factor, we have 2 plus x. Okay, 2 plus x greater than or equal to 0. Now, solving for the values of x, this will give us, okay, lipat natin sa kabila si 2. So, we'll be getting negative 2. Okay? And then, meron tayong negative both sides. Now, to get rid of this negative, we might multiply negative 1 or divide negative 1. If we do that, in return, magbabago or magiging opposite yung inequality natin. From greater than, magpapalit siya. Magbabago yung sign natin or yung inequality natin. So again, if we were to divide negative 1 here, this will give us x is less than or equal to, ayun. Kaya meron tayong ganito. This is 1 of the value of x. Okay? So x should not be less than 2 or equal to 2. Otherwise, kapag nangyari yon, magiging negative yung function natin. And we also have another case. This is when 2 plus x is greater than or equal to 0. This is just, all we have to do is to transpose 2 to the other side. Equation. So we have now x negative 2. So there's no need to multiply negative or divide by negative since okay naman, wala naman tayong sign for our x variable. So this is the other one. X is greater than or equal to negative 2. Meaning our x must be greater than or equal to negative 2 but less than or equal to negative 2. Sa number line, if we draw this in the number line, bawal ang values ng x is bawal maging negative 2 hanggang positive 2. So these values, ito yung mga values na hindi pwede kay x. And all the values between negative 2 and positive. Ito yung restriction natin. Okay. Malinaw yun? nagsasalita, ha? So, malinaw, ibig sabihin. So, in symbol, eto siya. This is our domain. The domain is now all set of x, element of R, such that x is greater than -2, but x is less than or equal to +2. Now, don't be confused dun sa inequality, no? Kung saan nakaturo yung inequality natin, ibig sabihin, dun yung mas maliit na value. For example, here, our inequality points to -2. Ibig sabihin, -2 is the lesser value. That's why x is greater than -2. But this time, our inequality here is pointing kay x. Ibig sabihin, x now is the lesser value. So, x is less than or equal to 2. Okay. I hope nakuha yun. So, we're good with our domain. So, magtanong kayo. Tanong na. Hindi kasi kayo nagsasalita kaya hindi ko alam eh. Mahirap mag-assume, di ba? Hello? Diyan pa kayo? Picture na tayo ulit. Walang nagsasalita.
Yes,
sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you please repeat it? Medyo hindi clear yung audio.
Hello po.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir.
Saan na tayo? So, we're good with our domain, no? This time, we'll go to the range. Although the range of this function is somewhat the same as how we solve for the domain of the function. So, to determine the range, we know that h only takes non-negative values for any x in its domain. Now, let us solve x in terms of y, or sa madaling salita, we have to separate or to isolate the value of x. So from y is equal to square root of 4 minus x squared. And to isolate the value of x, of course, we have to get rid of the radical sign. To get rid of the radical sign, we have to square both sides of the equation. That's why we have here y squared, and then wala na tayong radical sign doon. Kasi square root or square of a square root will result to the radicand or the expression inside the radical sign. And then isolating the x variable. So we have now x squared, and then ilipat din natin si y to the other side of the equation, giving us x squared is equal to 4 minus y squared. And then we only need one value of x. So getting rid again dun sa square of x, we have to extract the root of the both side of the equation, giving us x is equivalent to positive negative square root of 4 minus y squared. And 4 minus y squared is the same as 4 minus x squared, although different lang yung variable natin. 4 minus x squared and 4y squared. So, although they were the same, no, don't assume that its domain is the same. I mean, its range is the same as the domain. No, you cannot say that y is greater than or equal to -2, or less than or equal to +2. No, we have this restriction. The same way as 4 minus x squared greater than or equal to 0, we have to solve for y in our inequality. 4 minus y squared greater than or equal to 0. So giving us y yung the same as kanina, y is less than or equal to 2, and y is greater than or equal to -2. But we have this restriction. But since h or the function cannot be negative, no? The function cannot be negative, or the radicand cannot be negative. Yan, h is greater than or equal to 0, meaning our graph or the graph of the function will always be starting dun sa y is equal to 0, or sa point where y is equivalent to 0. Nakuha ba yun? I repeat, no? Since the function cannot be negative and the radicand cannot be negative, no? The graph of the function of any radical function always start or always the range na lang. The range of the graph of any radical function always start to the point where y is equal to 0. Ulitin natin. I repeat. The range of this radical function starts to the point where y is equivalent to 0. Now let's graph this one for you to easily understand what I'm trying to say. Let me copy natin tong function. So this is our function. Kung may tanong lang kayo, magtanong lang, no? Y is equal to, hindi niya mabasa si square root. That's why I have to use. Yeah. My observation in this program is that it has a difficulty in reading the square root. I still don't know or find a way to write the equation using the square root, but using or expressing the equation in exponential form. So our exponent is 1 now. Although the same lang sila, square root of 4 minus x squared is just the same as the quantity 4 minus x squared raised to 1/2. Pareho lang sila. So let's graph this. And this is the graph of the function. Oops. So ayan. Again, let's identify the range. Ang range natin, these are the x values. So all our range kanina is a set of all x such that x is greater than, this is -2, greater than, so mas malaki daw kay -2 but less than +2. So here are the values of x that our graph that the graph passes through. So that is our range. And for our domain, this is our domain. All set of x such that x is greater than -2 or equal to -2 but less than or equal to +2. And our range, eto lang. Ito lang yung range natin. From 0 to, this is 2. This is 2. So all set of y such that y is greater than 0 but less than negative at less than positive. Nakukuha. Guys. Max. Naka-sound trip pa pala si Brian eh. Jerickson, ano yung pinapanood mo? Okay.
Sir, tanong lang po.
Sir,
Yes,
sir.
Master.
Ano po? Yung po
Uy,
bang,
mo yan.
yung Microsoft po ba na calculator na to, pwede din po bang gamitin pang ano? Parang scientific calculator din po ba siya?
Yeah, pwede naman. Pwede siya.
Okay po, salamat.
Sir,
Yun.
naglalabas po ba siya ng solution?
Yeah, actually yes. Teka lang. Meron dito eh. Calculus, statistics. May equation solver tayo dito sa taas. You notice. And then, meron ding solution dito.
Hindi mo na ano yung mic ko.
Although this is not the time for us to to discuss the feature of this. You may want to search it in the internet kung ano yung mga features.
Okay po.
So moving on tayo sa iba. Okay na si 1.9. Ayun. 1.8, 1.10 na pala to. Ayan, 1.10. We have the 1.10. Find the domain of the function f of x is equal to 4 over x squared minus 9. So we are just to identify the domain. And observing our function, we have a fractional function. So we have 4 over x squared minus 9. And we have to restrict our domain. We need to get rid of values of x where our function becomes undefined. So we need to find values of x where the function becomes undefined. So to do that, our denominator must not be equal to 0. So since f is a rational functional domain, the set of all x element of R such that x squared minus 9, which is the denominator, cannot be equal to 0. And after that we have to solve for the x values in x squared minus 9. Now solving this, solve natin, x squared minus 9 is the difference between two squares. And difference between two squares, ating magiging factors are sum and difference of the same two terms. X minus 3 cannot be, not equal. Cannot be equal to 0. Okay. And separating these two values of x, we have first one, setting x plus 3 not equal to x, or ipat natin si positive 3 of negative 3. And the other one is x minus 3 not equal to x. And ipat natin si negative 3, we have now positive 3. So, ito yung mga values ni x na kailangan natin iwasan para maging defined yung function natin. So, the domain is now all set of x such that x, an element, or all values of x, element of r such that x is not equal to positive or negative 3 para maging defined yung function natin. Any question? So we're done with the two parts. Any question?
Sir, may tanong po.
Yes, master.
Ano po yung parang sign na ganun po na ano?
Where? Yung R?
Not equal. Yung
Or
pong
may slash na
ganun,
equal?
backslash, apo.
And not equal.
Not equal po. Not
Yeah.
equal. Sige po.
Okay. Let's have a short break para pahinga tayo. So it's 2:50, no? Let's have a 10-minute break. Ayun, no? Short yun. 10-minute break tayo. Let's break. Oops. Okay. Share ko lang para baka may pumasok kasing mag-observe sa atin. At least they know that we are taking our break. So we have to be back. We have to be back at 3 p.m. Okay? 3 p.m.
Sir, mag-leave na po kami.
Yung mga naka-data, okay lang na mag-leave muna kayo. Basta don't forget to join again at 3 p.m. No?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Masave natin yung data natin. And for those who are using Wi-Fi, you may just turn off your mic and turn off your camera. Okay, let's be back at 3 p.m. Bye. Okay, so we have evaluating of functions. Functions can also be evaluated at a certain value. First, we substitute the given numerical value for the given variables, and then we simplify the resulting expression. For example, example 1.10. I think it's 11 already. Now find the numerical value of the function f of x is equal to negative x plus 15 when x is negative 3. So basic lang to. If you have the given function f of x, all you have to do is to substitute x for its given value, which is negative 3. So you have f of x here, and you have to look for f of negative 3. F of negative 3 means you have to replace x, or you have to replace negative 3 in place of x. So we have now negative times negative 3 plus 15. giving us basic rule in mathematics. Negative multiplied by negative becomes positive. We have 3 plus 15 will give us 18. So our solution will be 18. So yun na siya. F of negative 3 is equivalent to 18. Or the function is equal to 18 when x is negative 3. So that is one example. Example number 1.11, or second example in our evaluation of function. Given the function x squared minus 3x plus 5, find m of 1/2 and m of square root of 2. M of 1/2 and m squared of 2. We have the given function m of x is equal to x squared minus 3x plus 5. So yan, all the values of x will be replaced by 1. I mean, all the variable x will be replaced by 1/2. That's why we have this line. Okay.
Sir.
Now, the squaring of function is equivalent to the square of numerator over the square of denominator. I repeat, the squaring a fraction is squaring the numerator over the square of the denominator. And then we have minus, ayun, kaya nagkaroon tayo ng 1/4 dito. Kasi 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. And then multiplying fractions to fraction naman. Okay, we have here an imaginary over 1. So lagi yun, no? If you have a whole number, it's always na meron siyang imaginary na over 1. So multiplying fraction to fraction is direct lang siya. Numerator to numerator over denominator to denominator. So in our case, 3 times 1 is 3. And 1 times 2 is 2. So, copy lang natin yung operation, which is minus. And then, of course, we have 5. And again, 5 is a whole number. Meron siyang imaginary over 1. This is necessary para ma-identify natin yung LCD ng 1/4, 3/2, and 5 over 1. So, LCD, dapat master nyo na yung expert na kayo sa pagkuha ng LCD, no? As early as junior or as early as elementary, tinuro na sa atin to. We have the LCD, or it is the LCM of whole numbers. LCD is the least number that can be divided exactly by our denominator. I repeat, LCD, it is the smallest number that can be divided exactly by our denominator, which are 4, 2, and 1. In our case, our LCD is 4. Okay? 4. Yeah, 4. Now, to determine the numerator, yung mga ilalagay natin dun sa operations natin, or the values that we are to operate in our numerator, makukuha natin to with the use of our LCD. No? LCD divided by each of the denominator multiplied by their numerator. So, unahin natin yung first term. 4 divided by 4 is 1 times 1. The numerator is equivalent to 1. Next. Second term, we have LCD 4 divided by 2
2.
is 2 times 3.
6.
We have 6.
Copy.
And then lastly, we have 5. 4 divided by 1
4
times
times
5
5.
is 20. Now, simplifying our numerator, 1 less 6 plus 20 will give us 15. So, our solution is 15 over 4. If there is no, or we can no longer express the solution in simplest form, then that would be our final answer, 15 over 4. 15 over 4. Next, letter B. Question.
Sir,
Okay, okay
pwede
ba?
po ba yan express as mixed numbers?
Yeah, okay lang naman. But I'll be considering kahit hindi siya nakamix.
Okay po, sir. Thank you po.
Kahit improper siya. Okay, letter B. This time we'll be replacing x by square root of 2. So all the values of x in our given, all the variables x in our given will be replaced by square root of 2. That's why we have this line. So we have this line. And next, yung sinabi ko kanina, let's say we have a radical sign and raising this radical with the same index and same exponent will just cancel the radical. So matitira lang is the radicand.
2.
That's why we have 2 here. Okay? And then you cannot combine, or I mean, you cannot multiply a radical expression by a whole number. Kaya i-combine nyo lang siya kapag sasamahin nyo lang. Okay. 3 square root of 2. 3 square root of 2 is the same as 3 times the square root of 2. And then we have 5. Okay, yung plus 5. And then to simplify, again, we can only add or subtract or combine numbers that are similar or expressions that are similar. So we'll combine the whole numbers. 2 plus 5 is 7. Okay? And then wala tayong pwede gawin sa 3 square root of 2. So let's just copy it. Our final solution would be 7 minus 3 square root of 2. Okay. Okay. Okay, last na to. Last example. The evaluation. Okay. So we have now this function. This time cubic tayo. Cubic. So kanina we have linear, and then we have quadratic, and then we have the cubic. So we have n of x is equivalent to negative 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus 6x plus 7. We have to find the value of the function if if x is negative 1, square root of 3, and negative 1 half. Now we don't have problems, or we don't have problem if our x is a whole number, or if our x is an integer, for example, negative 1. Okay lang siya. So, substituting negative 1 in place of x, we have this line, and cube of negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 will give us negative 1. So, we have negative 2 times negative 1. And square root of negative 1 is positive 1. And then, tayo negative 6 times negative 1 is
Positive.
positive 6. And then we have plus 7. And then applying basic arithmetic, we'll have 20 here. So our solution for letter A is 20. Okay, for letter B, if x is square root of 3 naman. So we'll be replacing all variables x by square root of 3. That's why we have this line. So unlike nung kanina, our index here is 2, right? Square. And our exponent is 3. So we cannot apply the cancellation of radical sign. But still, we can simplify the radical. So let me show you this, how we simplify this. If you review our laws of radical, if you review the laws of radical, this expression is just the same as this expression. Okay. Based dun sa radical sign natin. So when we are cubing or squaring or raising a certain radical in a certain number, it means that we are to raise the radicand in a certain number. So pwede natin ipasok yung exponent dun kay mismong radicand natin. Okay? Now, this one is the same as square root of 27. But as we know, 27 is not the perfect square. But we can express 27 as a factor of, or as the product of the factors 9 times 3. Okay, where 9 is a perfect square. So later on, we can extract the square root of 9 and magre-retain sa loob si square root of 3. So yun yung mangyari dito sa first term natin, no? And for our second term, ma-apply na natin yung cancellation of radical since index and exponent are equal. So ma-cancel yung radical. And dito, we can just combine the two. 6 square root of 3 and then copy natin sa plus 7. We have now this line. Okay? Nakuha itong square root of 9 times 3 from here. That's plus 5 times 3. 3 here is the result of squaring the square root of 3. And then copy natin. Yan. Then simplifying this, we can now extract the root of 9. What is the square root of 9? 3. And the result must be multiplied to 2.
Negative 2.
So 3 times 2 is
Negative.
negative 6. And then since 3 here is not a perfect square, magre-retain siya dun sa loob. Kaya meron tayong square root of 3 dito. We have square root of 3. And then 5 times 3 is 15. Minus 6 square root of 3 plus 7. And then we can now combine the similar expressions. Similar radicals, take note. Recall natin, similar radicals are radicals with the same index and same radicand.
Radical.
Okay, ulitin ko ha. Similar radicals are radicals with the same index and same radicand. In our case, they are both in square root and they are both have 3 as their radicand. So you can combine these two radicals. Kaya meron tayong negative 6 minus 6 is negative 12. And then copy nyo lang yung radical na square root of 3. And of course, the whole number 15 plus 7 is 22. Okay, so our final solution would be 22 minus 12 square root of 3. Question?
Wala po, sir.
Wala.
Apo.
Okay, last. We have to replace x by negative 1/2. Negative 1/2. So we have this line replacing excess by negative 1/2. This is our line. And yan nga, raising a fraction to a certain number means that you have to raise the numerator over the raise of denominator. So we have here, and since this is negative, apply siya, no? Negative, negative, negative is negative. So 1 cube is 1, 2 cube is 8. Here, 1 cube is 1, and 2 cube is 8. And from here, I think I have here an error. So negative squared is positive, no? Negative squared is positive, kaya positive siya dito. But 1 squared is 1, 2 squared this time is 4. So this must be 4. May mali ako sa solution. So we have 4. And then, next, sa third term tayo. This one. Okay, multiplication, negative 6 times negative is positive. And take note, we also always have an imaginary 1 there. So 6 times 1 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. 6 over 2 is
3.
3. So meron tayong 3 doon. And then we have plus 5. Plus 7, I'm sorry. So simplifying, again, we have imaginary over 1 here. And negative, negative becomes positive. 2 over 8. Magiging 2 over 8 siya, no? 2 over 8 at and
term.
its lowest term would be 1/4. Then we have 5 over 4. This should be 4. 5 over 4. And then yung 3 plus 7 natin, yung 10. 3 plus 7 is equivalent to 10. And then we have imaginary over 1. And then applying uli to simplify this fraction, at this addition of fractions, we have to find the LCD. So our LCD is 4. 4 over 4 times 1 is 1. 4 over 4 times 5 is 5. This should be 5. And 4 over 1 times 10
4,
is 40.
40,
So this should be
46.
46. So our solution, can we further simplify this one? Yes, no? What is the lowest term?
23 over 2.
23 over. Ayan. So, ito yung final answer. Wala.
Yes, yes.
23 over 2. So, ayun. We're done with our first module. We finished 3 topics. The definition of functions, the domain and the range, and the evaluation of function. Ito yung mga ginamit kong references. And then you may now start, or I think yung iba sa inyo nakapag-start na. For letter A, all you have to do is to determine whether the equation is function or not. So y is a function of x or not, or simply function or not a function. So, na siya. And then for letter B, domain and the range, domain lang. There's no need to to look for the range. Domain lang ang kailangan natin. Okay? And C, evaluation of function. Yung last topic natin. Okay. That's all for today. If you don't have more question, or if you have, huwag na kayong mahiya para ma-clarify natin.
Sir, dun po dun sa
So,
function, tsaka ano pa yung
the letter A.
sa kasagutan.
Yes.
Opo.
How about this?
Find, yan,
Determine.
y as function x. Determine, no? Okay.
Y as function of x or y as function of x, meaning the equation is a function or not. Kaya may or not tayo.
Okay po, sir. Salamat po.
No more. If no more question, okay, that's all for today. I'll be uploading this, the recorded session, no? And then, if ever na may gusto kayong balikan, tignan nyo na lang. Okay, that's all for today, guys. See you again.
Anong klase ng mapa ang kailangan mong dalhin, Miss Ka?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Salamat po.
Thank you po.
Sir.
Okay.
Good day,
Thank you, sir.
Good day.
Thank po.
Hindi po.